The official contract stated Jonah Mercer was hired to tutor a princess, which was like saying a zookeeper was hired to pet sit a single, very important and potentially bitey hamster. It was technically true, but omitted the terrifying specifics. The real job description, as far as Jonah could tell from the suffocatingly formal paperwork, was to fix a broken heart the size of an 8-year-old girl. Her lesson plans, laminated and triple-checked, included modules on long division, the history of trade alliances, and, if she could figure out how, a unit on, "Your entire world has not, in fact, ended. We just need to recatalog the filing system of your soul." She was still workshopping that title. Her own soul felt like a junk drawer, so she wasn't sure she was qualified. This entire venture was a monument to inadequacy, and she was its chief architect. "Oh, wonderful," her wolf muttered as the carriage passed through the iron gates of the moon-blessed royal compound. "We've walked back into the house that threw us out. Shall I roll over now or wait until they ask nicely?" Jonah's wolf had been sarcastic since the day she manifested, which was roughly the same day Jonah's life had fallen apart at age 12. The wolf had arrived bitter and had only fermented since. She held grudges the way other wolves held territory, with absolute commitment and no intention of ever letting go. "We're going to be fine," Jonah muttered under her breath, clutching the handle of her briefcase so hard her knuckles were white. The briefcase contained 3 sets of color-coded notes, 4 different brands of teaching-grade chalk, a therapeutic-grade stress ball, and a laminated 5-step plan for first contact with grieving royalty. Step 1 was breathe. She was currently failing Step 1. "Define fine," the wolf said, "because if fine means returning to the castle that expelled our mother, working for the family that ruined her career, and pretending we don't want to set the drapes on fire, then yes, we are exquisitely fine." The contract had come through the Royal Education Board, anonymous posting, competitive salary, immediate start. It had not, at any point, mentioned which royal family needed the tutor. Jonah had accepted because the pay was extraordinary, and because she was, at that particular moment, between positions. Between positions was a polite way of saying her last employer had gone bankrupt and she'd been eating rice and lentils for 3 weeks. She had not known this was the moon-blessed castle until the carriage turned onto the road she'd walked down 15 years ago, carrying everything she owned in a canvas bag, her mother's hand gripping hers so tightly it left marks. Jonah had been 12. The prince who'd watched them leave had been 17, old enough to know better, old enough to have stopped it. The guard, a man whose jaw could be used to crack walnuts, stopped before a pair of doors that were frankly just showing off. He knocked once, a sound like a boulder being dropped, and a muffled voice answered. The guard opened the door and gestured her inside. The office was less a room and more a cathedral dedicated to books and melancholy. A fireplace big enough to roast a bear stood cold and empty, and the man behind the desk was not a stranger. Alex Moonblessed. No longer the gangly, bookish 17-year-old who had been her protector, her hero, her favorite person in the world. Now the king. He looked less like a king and more like a man who had been interrupted in the middle of a very important haunting. His hair was a mess, his eyes were shadowed, and he was wearing a beautifully tailored jacket over a shirt that had a small, faint stain near the collar. It looked suspiciously like jam. But it was him. The boy who'd let her use his hiding spot in the library stacks. The boy who'd invented a secret language with her using the Dewey Decimal System. The boy who'd read her poetry when she couldn't sleep. The boy who had sat in silence while her mother was stripped of her title and their family was expelled from the royal territory. He got tall, her wolf observed flatly. Tragic. Would have been more satisfying if he'd peaked at 17. Alex looked up from his papers. The color drained from his face. "Jonah?" "She is here," Alex's wolf said inside his head, its voice deep and resonant, and trembling with something that was not surprise, but recognition. "She has returned, finally. Now try not to fail her again. I will not hold my breath, as history suggests the outcome." Alex's wolf had been his harshest critic for 15 years. It was proud, regal, ancient-sounding, and absolutely disgusted with its human. It had been on Team Jonah since Alex was 17, and Jonah was a fierce, sharp 12-year-old who followed him around the library like a small, determined shadow. When 17-year-old Alex had obeyed his father's command to stay silent during the healer's tribunal, the wolf had tried to force a shift, tried to make Alex run after Jonah and her mother as they walked through the gates. Alex had held it back. The wolf had never forgiven him. It considered Alex's entire reign to be a slow-motion apology that hadn't yet been delivered. It was not wrong. "Your Majesty," Jonah said. Her voice was ice and glass. She executed a curtsy that was 50% training and 50% her knees threatening mutiny. She did not fall. A small victory. "The Education Board sent me. I was not informed of the specific posting until arrival. The board handles all appointments. I didn't—" He stood, because that's what one did. He was the king. He was supposed to be in command. Instead, he felt like a poorly piloted collection of limbs. "Jonah, Ms. Mercer," she corrected, and the correction landed like a door slamming shut on 15 years of unfinished sentences. "She corrected you," his wolf noted with grim satisfaction. "Good. You have not earned the use of her name. You lost that privilege when you were 17 and chose your father's approval over her mother's life. You were not a child, Alex. You were nearly a man. That is the part that cannot be forgiven." Jonah's wolf, meanwhile, was conducting a rapid assessment. "He looks terrible." "Good. No, wait, not good. We are here to work, not to gloat." She paused. "We can gloat a little, internally, as a treat." Alex recovered what remained of his composure. "Ms. Mercer, thank you for coming. Finding someone of your caliber on such short notice, we are grateful." He gestured to a chair that looked more expensive than her entire apartment. She sat on the very edge of it, her back ramrod straight. "Princess Lily has had a difficult year." That was the understatement of the century. A year ago, Theron Moonblessed, Alex's older brother and the king, had been killed in a border ambush. In the same attack, Alex's older sister, Princess Katrine, had also been lost. Katrine's husband, a mid-rank alpha named Callum Greyholt, had survived physically but shattered in every other way. Their 8-year-old daughter, Lily, had been found alone in their quarters twice before Alex took emergency guardianship. Callum had been sent to a rehabilitation territory in the mountain packs. Alex, the bookish second son who preferred poetry to politics, had been handed a crown, a kingdom, and a broken niece all in the same afternoon. It was the worst kind of inheritance, one that came with a to-do list written entirely in grief. Jonah knew all of this. Everyone in the region knew it. What she hadn't known was that she'd be standing in this specific office, looking at this specific man, feeling 15 years of carefully archived fury competing with a professionalism she was clinging to like a life raft. "Say something meaningful," Alex's wolf commanded. "No, not that. Not that either. You are a catastrophe in a crown. I have seen you address the War Council with less visible terror than you are currently displaying toward a woman who weighs approximately half of you." "Lily is quiet," Alex managed. "She was always so full of life. Now—" He trailed off, rubbing a hand over his face. He looked exhausted down to his bones. Jonah's meticulously prepared speech about educational frameworks and holistic development should have come next. Instead, against every instinct telling her to stay cold and clinical, she found herself saying, "Children grieve in chapters, Your Majesty. Sometimes they just get stuck on a really sad page. They need someone to help them turn it." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a second, the fog in his eyes cleared. Something ancient flickered in the space between them, a ghost of a 17-year-old boy reading poetry to a 12-year-old girl who thought he was the bravest person alive. Then it was gone, replaced by the careful distance between a king and his employee, between a man who'd failed and the woman he'd failed. "You will have full access to the Royal Library," he said, "and anything else you require. My beta, Marcus Thorne, will see to your needs. He's the one who actually runs the kingdom." The last part was said with a wry, self-deprecating twist of his lips, and Jonah hated that it was still charming. She hated that she noticed. He's doing the self-deprecating humor thing, her wolf noted. The thing he used to do when we were children and he was nervous. I am unmoved, completely unmoved. File it under irrelevant observations next to he has nice hands and his jaw did that thing. We are not keeping that file. Delete it. I said delete it. And then the door creaked open. A small girl with enormous, sorrowful eyes and messy dark hair that was distinctly moon-blessed peeked in. Princess Lily. She was holding a stuffed badger with one ear. The badger had seen better days, better decades, and possibly better centuries. Lily, Alex said, his voice softening instantly into something that made Jonah's chest ache against her will. This is Ms. Mercer. She's going to be helping you with your studies. Lily said nothing for a very long moment. She stared at Jonah with the unblinking intensity of a small owl evaluating a mouse. Then she walked into the room, circled Jonah's chair once in complete silence, and came to a stop directly in front of her. Can you do voices? Lily asked. Jonah blinked. I'm sorry? When you read stories, can you do voices? My last tutor read everything in the same voice, even the dragons. Dragons should not sound like a man reading a shopping list. Yes, I can do voices. Lily looked at her uncle. She can do voices, she reported, as though ticking a box on an invisible checklist. Then she looked back at Jonah. Do you know any facts about badgers? Badgers, Jonah said, scrambling, are one of the few animals that can delay the implantation of a fertilized egg to time the birth for optimal conditions. Lily stared at her. Then, slowly, she held out the stuffed badger. His name is Badger. He thinks that's very interesting. He says you can stay. The pup has accepted us, Jonah's wolf observed, on the basis of badger trivia. I am not sure whether to be relieved or concerned about the selection criteria. Lily tucked Badger under her arm and marched out of the room, pausing at the door to look back at both adults with an expression that, on a CEO, would be called strategic assessment, but on an 8-year-old was simply terrifying. Badger says you two are being weird, she announced. Then she left. A spark of something lit in Jonah's wolf. Oh no, the pup is clever. The pup is very, very clever. This is either going to be wonderful or catastrophic. Place your bets. The first tutoring session was a masterclass in passive resistance. Jonah had laid out a beautiful spread of educational materials. Historical maps drawn on parchment, a fascinating abacus with beads carved like little wolves, and a set of grammar flashcards she'd stayed up until 2 a.m. illustrating. Princess Lily regarded the display with the enthusiasm of a condemned prisoner eyeing the gallows. This map shows the trade routes established by your great-grandmother, Queen Dagny, Jonah said, her voice unnaturally bright. She was famous for negotiating the Jade Treaty with the Sunstone clans. See? This is where they exchanged goods. Lily poked the map with a small finger. It's just a line. It's a very important line. It brought prosperity to the entire valley. It's a line that meant no one went hungry. Lily considered this. Badger is hungry, she announced, holding up the stuffed animal. He wants a biscuit. He says trade routes are only interesting if there are biscuits at the end of them. Badger has strong opinions about economics. Badger makes a fair point about incentive structures, Jonah conceded, because it was day 1 and she was already negotiating with a stuffed animal. The rest of the session followed a similar pattern. Jonah would present a fact. Lily would relay Badger's opinion on the fact. Badger, it turned out, found mathematics suspicious, considered grammar a conspiracy by adults to make talking harder, and believed that the history of the Moonblessed dynasty would be improved if it included more stories about animals. Jonah began to suspect that Badger was less a comfort object and more a one-eared diplomatic shield that Lily deployed to say everything she couldn't say as herself. The pup is using the Badger as a proxy personality, Jonah's wolf observed. Clever. We used sarcasm. She uses a stuffed animal. Same survival strategy, different packaging. That night, Jonah sat in her suite writing notes. Under Student Assessment Day 1, she wrote, Princess Lily is highly intelligent, emotionally guarded, and conducting all communication through a stuffed badger named Badger. Recommend patience, biscuits, and voices for the dragons. She felt that familiar cold wash of inadequacy, the same feeling she'd had at 22 when she'd been passed over for the head tutor position at the Thornfield Academy. The committee chair had smiled sympathetically and said, "You're very capable, Ms. Mercer, but we need someone with a bit more presence." Presence, code for someone who doesn't flinch when powerful people walk into the room. Code for someone who wasn't broken by a tribunal at age 12. She'd been passed over 3 more times at 3 different institutions before she stopped applying for permanent positions altogether. Temporary contracts, short engagements. Leave before they can see you're not enough. And now she was back in the castle that had taught her she was disposable, trying to save a child who communicated exclusively through taxidermy. Just as Jonah was finally unwinding, a frantic knock echoed on her door. It was a young maid, her face pale. "Miss Mercer, it's the princess. She's had a nightmare. She's calling for you." For her? Not her uncle, the king? Jonah threw on a robe and followed the maid. She found Alex already in Lily's room, standing helplessly beside the massive 4-poster bed. Lily was huddled under the covers, making small, distressed sounds. Badger was positioned on the pillow beside her, facing the door, as though standing guard. "Lilybug?" Alex whispered, his voice thick with worry. "I'm here. It was just a dream." "I want Miss Jonah," a small voice mumbled from the mountain of blankets. "Badger wants her too. He says tutors are better at monsters than kings." Alex looked over at Jonah, his expression a mixture of hurt, confusion, and exhaustion. Jonah's heart ached for him, and she resented the ache. She moved to the other side of the bed and knelt. "Princess Lily, it's Jonah. I'm here." A small hand snaked out and grabbed her wrist. The grip was surprisingly strong for someone who claimed to be terrified. "It was dark," Lily whispered. "There were monsters." Jonah looked at the girl's face. Her eyes were wide, but they weren't glassy with sleep or terror. They were sharp, calculating, and they were watching her uncle's reaction with the focus of a chess player 3 moves ahead. The nightmare was as real as a $3 bill. This was a scheme, a brilliant, tiny, heartbreaking scheme. Somewhere in that small, grieving brain, Lily had decided that the best way to keep the adults close was to need them both at the same time. "The pup is running a coordinated manipulation campaign," Jonah's wolf noted with something that sounded dangerously like admiration. "Using emotional distress as a social adhesive. I respect the hustle." Instead of calling her out, Jonah played along. She squeezed the small hand. "Well, monsters are famously terrified of tutors. It's a little-known fact. They hate grammar. Sends them running for the hills." A tiny giggle escaped from under the covers. Then Lily's voice, muffled but clearly enjoying herself. "Badger says the monsters are also scared of kings who have jam on their shirts." Alex looked down at his collar, the jam stain. He hadn't changed. Something between a laugh and a groan escaped him, and Lily giggled again, louder this time. "She just made a joke," his wolf said, stunned. "She has not made a joke in a year. The Omega made her laugh, and then she made us laugh, and the 3 of us are standing in a bedroom at midnight because an 8-year-old is running a psychological operation with a 1-eared badger. This is either a disaster or a miracle. I have insufficient data to determine which." Alex let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for a week. "Thank you," he murmured to Jonah. He was standing close enough that she could smell the faint, clean scent of cedar and night air that clung to him, and her wolf filed this information under hazardous materials, with a note that read, "Do not inhale, do not catalog, do not under any circumstances remember this scent at 3 in the morning." "She just needed a different person to tell the monsters to go away," Jonah said quietly, not looking at him. They stood there in the quiet, and after Lily's breathing had evened out, Alex walked Jonah back toward her room. In the silence of the hallway, their footsteps echoed off the flagstones, the same flagstones they used to race each other across when they were children. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, stopping outside her door. She hasn't laughed in months. She's a clever girl, Jonah said carefully. She knows what she needs. He nodded, looking lost in his own castle. A silence stretched between them, heavy with 15 years of everything unsaid. Tell her, his wolf urged. And for once, its voice wasn't harsh, but aching. Tell her you are sorry. Tell her you have carried it since you were 17. But Alex, as his wolf had predicted, said nothing of consequence. Good night, Ms. Mercer. Good night, Your Majesty. You failed, his wolf said as she closed her door. Again. I am keeping count. The current tally is 4,712. I round up for holidays. On her side of the door, Jonah leaned against the cool wood. He's doing the sad noble thing again, her wolf muttered. Tell him I'm not interested. Tell him I said he smells like guilt and old books and I am unmoved. A pause. We are unmoved. Entirely. Stop sniffing the door. That is beneath us. Lily's next gambit was executed with the subtlety of a cannonball. 2 days later, Jonah found a folded piece of parchment slipped under her door. It was written in a child's careful handwriting, with several words crossed out and rewritten, and it was addressed to Ms. Jonah and Badger. It read, Official Plan by Princess Lily Rose Moonblessed, age 8. Operation: Make things normal. Step 1. Get Jonah to stay for dinner. In progress. Step 2. Make Uncle Alex smile. Hard. Step 3. Make Uncle Alex smile at Jonah. Very hard. Step 4. This line was heavily scribbled out, but Jonah could just make out the words, Get them to be friends, maybe. Secret. Step 5. Biscuits for Badger. Always. Jonah stared at the note. Her wolf stared at the note. Neither of them had a sarcastic comment ready, which was a first. She's 8, her wolf said finally. She's 8 years old, and she is project managing her own emotional survival. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Both, Jonah thought. Definitely both. She was still holding the note when Marcus Thorne appeared at her door. Marcus had the weary, perpetually put-upon expression of a man who spent his days preventing a king from accidentally setting himself on fire. His current project was the annual Pack Unity Festival, a source of endless logistical headaches. And he spoke about seating charts with the haunted intensity of a man who had seen things. Terrible things. Involving place cards. Ms. Mercer, he sighed. His Majesty requests your presence for dinner this evening. Formal. Jonah blinked. Dinner? With the king? I think there must be a mistake. Her contract explicitly stated her meals were to be taken in her suite. Clause 14, subsection B. No mistake, Marcus said. The invitation was misplaced by the princess. She forgot she was supposed to give it to you this morning. He held up a crumpled piece of parchment that had clearly been stepped on, sat on, and possibly fed to a stuffed badger at some point in its journey. It's a dinner with the trade delegation from the Granite Peak Pack. We can't have an empty seat. Diplomatic incident. Step 1 of Lily's plan, executed. Jonah almost laughed. She was being outmaneuvered by a third grader. Oh, marvelous, her wolf drawled. A formal dinner with the man who destroyed our life? Do we get a seating card, or shall we just sit on the knife's edge where we always end up around him? Jonah spent the next 2 hours in a state of controlled panic. The one formal dress she'd packed was simple, black, and Omega appropriate, designed to be elegant but forgettable. As she fastened her mother's simple silver necklace, she gave herself a stern talking to in the mirror. You are a professional. This is a work event. You will discuss the weather, agricultural yields, and you will not, under any circumstances, spill soup on yourself or the Granite Peak Alpha. We will also not notice his hands, his jaw, or the way his voice sounds when he's tired, her wolf added. We have a policy. The policy is nothing. The policy is a fortress. Do not open the gates for a man with jam on his shirt, no matter how architecturally impressive his jawline is. I cannot believe I just thought the word jawline. We are in crisis. The gray hall was intimidating. Richly dressed wolves, laughter and conversation echoing off stone walls. Jonah felt like a house sparrow in an aviary of peacocks. She found her seat between a doddering old earl and Princess Lily. Alex was at the head of the table, looking deeply uncomfortable as the Granite Peak Alpha described, at tremendous length and volume, the superiority of Granite Peak sheep. Overhead, the dark shape of the bell tower was visible through a high window. Jonah remembered it from childhood, the great bell that rang for celebrations and mournings. It had been silent for over a year now. Lily, looking angelic in a velvet dress, beamed at her. "You came," she whispered, as if it were a delightful surprise and not the result of a carefully orchestrated plot. "You forgot the invitation, little sneak," Jonah whispered back. "Badger forgot it," Lily corrected primly. "Badger is very forgetful. I can't be responsible for Badger's organizational failures." She pressed something small and cool into Jonah's hand under the table. Jonah glanced down. A small, smooth black stone, intricately carved on one side. "For if you get nervous," Lily murmured. "Badger found it in Uncle Alex's study. Badger is an explorer." Then she turned to her soup, the picture of innocence, and began feeding invisible spoonfuls to Badger with an elaborate pantomime that made the old earl beside Jonah chuckle. Jonah closed her fingers around the stone, its weight a tiny anchor. Throughout the dinner, she rubbed her thumb over its smooth surface. She managed a coherent conversation with the Earl about his prize-winning roses, made the Granite Peak Alpha's stern wife crack a smile with an anecdote about a particularly stubborn goat from her village, and only thought about Alex's jawline 3 times, each of which her wolf logged as a policy violation. From the head of the table, Alex watched her. He'd been dreading this dinner for weeks. The Granite Peak Alpha was all bluster and ambition, and Alex felt like a fraud playing the part of a powerful king. But then he saw Jonah navigating the social waters with a quiet grace he found mesmerizing. She wasn't loud or commanding. She was just present, making people feel heard. He saw Lily give her the stone. He recognized it immediately. It wasn't a worry stone. It was the missing Black Queen from his grandfather's priceless obsidian chess set, a piece lost for 50 years. He almost choked on his wine. His first instinct was panic. That was an irreplaceable artifact. His second was a wave of something warm and baffling as he watched Jonah fiddle with it, completely unaware of its value. "She is magnificent," his wolf said quietly. "She has always been magnificent. You let magnificent walk out of your life because your father told you to sit down. I hope the chair was comfortable. I have asked you this before. I will continue asking until you produce a satisfactory answer. You will note that no answer exists." Lily, meanwhile, was watching both of them watching each other, with the barely contained glee of a mad scientist whose experiment was producing results. She turned to Badger, held him up to her ear, nodded gravely, and then announced, to no one in particular, "Badger says Uncle Alex keeps looking at Jonah. Badger thinks that's interesting." "Badger should eat his soup," Alex said from the head of the table, his ears turning visibly red. "Badger doesn't have a mouth," Lily pointed out reasonably. "He has a seam. It's a design flaw." Later, after the guests departed, Jonah was walking back to her room when Alex's voice stopped her. "Ms. Mercer." He was leaning against a pillar in the darkened hallway, formal jacket gone, sleeves rolled up. He looked less like a king and more like a man who had barely survived the conversational equivalent of trench warfare. "You were very good tonight," he said, "with the delegates. And the Earl. He usually just falls asleep." "He's very passionate about begonias," Jonah said with a small smile. Then she caught herself smiling and stopped. "Professional." "He's drowning," her wolf observed. "Good. No, wait, bad. We're supposed to be professional." "Fine, he's drowning and I feel nothing. That's professional." "She seems better," he said softly. "Lily, since you arrived." "She's not better," Jonah corrected, more gently than she intended. She's just not alone with it anymore. There's a difference. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. My brother was the sun. Everyone orbited him. He knew how to do all of this, the feasts, the politics. Katrina was the warmth. She could walk into a room and make everyone feel they mattered. And I just read books. He is confessing tactical weakness, his wolf observed. Good, this is accurate. You are not good at feasts. You are not good at most things. But the fact that you are saying it to her, of all people, suggests a neural pathway may still function. Proceed with extreme caution and, if possible, fewer pauses. The pauses make you look like a buffering portrait. Books are a good place to start, Jonah said. They have maps for everything. Even for being a king you didn't ask to be. There's no map for this, Ms. Mercer. Then you draw a new one, she replied, her voice firmer than she expected. And then she heard herself, and felt furious, because she was being kind to him. She was helping him. The boy who had let her mother burn. Her wolf agreed. Stop helping the man who destroyed us. This is not our job. Our job is the pup, the paycheck, and the door. Good night, Your Majesty, she said, and walked away before he could see that her eyes were bright. The next evening, Jonah found a new rhythm with Lily. Academic lessons were still met with resistance, but when Jonah suggested they read a story, Lily's entire demeanor changed. She fetched a heavy book of old pack legends, its cover worn smooth with time. This was Mama's favorite, she said, her voice small. She used to read about the grief moss. It grows deep in the crypts where people are sad. She said it eats the sadness, so you don't have to carry it all by yourself. That sounds like a very wise legend. Mama said it was real, Lily whispered. She said she saw it once, when Grandma died. She said it glowed. Lily paused, then added, with the devastating matter-of-factness of a child, I wonder if it grew more when Mama died. They curled up in a window seat overlooking the darkening gardens. Jonah began to read, and as she read about a brave wolf pup venturing into the whispering woods, she found herself doing something deeply instinctual. Without thinking, she let a faint, calming scent of chamomile and warm milk weave into the air, a practice known as story scenting. An Omega gift, wrapping a story in emotion. An intimate act, usually reserved for one's own pups. Lily leaned into her, relaxing completely. She wasn't just hearing the story, she was feeling it. She was safe in the whispering woods because Jonah was there. From the doorway, Alex watched, unseen. He smelled the scent of safety and comfort filling the room, a scent from his own childhood. For an Omega to story scent, for a pup not her own, was a gesture of profound care, of belonging. She is nesting, his wolf said, unusually serious. The Omega who has every reason to despise this house is nesting for its pup. She is giving something she should, by rights, be giving to her own family. The family she might have had if you had not been a coward at 17. I trust this observation improves your evening. The next morning, the servants were talking. Marcus brought it up carefully over breakfast. The staff noticed the scenting, Ms. Mercer. It's caused some talk. It won't happen again, Jonah said, flushing. I didn't say it should stop. The princess slept through the night for the first time in months. But you should know that Callum Greyholt's people will hear about it. The name Callum Greyholt sent a chill through the room. Lily's father, Jonah said. Marcus nodded. He's been in rehabilitation for a year. He's also retained a pack advocate. The whispers are that he intends to petition for custody. And an Omega tutor scenting for the princess as though she were family will be used by his advocate to argue that the current arrangement is informal and emotionally confused. We can't even love a child without it being used against us, her wolf said bitterly. This family takes everything. The petition arrived 3 days later. Callum Greyholt, formerly of the Mountain Recovery Territory, petitioned for full custodial restoration of his biological daughter, Lily Greyholt Moonblessed. Attached were statements from healers, counselors, and character witnesses. Clean for 8 months, engaged in grief therapy, parenting workshops. The documents were thorough, sympathetic, and devastating. Alex read it twice, his hands trembling. Do not freeze, his wolf said. And there was no contempt now, only urgency. For once in your miserable tenure as my human, do not freeze. She has already lost her mother. She cannot lose her home. Get me Marcus, Alex said, his voice steady for the first time in months. And get me Ms. Mercer. Lily, because she was Lily, figured it out within 48 hours. She overheard Marcus mention Callum's name, and something in her face closed like a door. That evening, she appeared at Jonah's suite in her nightgown, clutching Badger with a look of terrible composure. Is my father coming to take me away? She asked. Jonah knelt to eye level. No one is taking you anywhere, Lily. There's going to be a hearing, and a lot of people who love you are going to make sure you're okay. Badger has a plan, Lily said. She held up a new piece of parchment. Operation: Don't get taken away. Step 1. Be very good at lessons so they think I'm learning fine here. Step 2. Be very polite to father so he thinks I'm not angry. I am angry. Step 3. Make Uncle Alex and Jonah be a team so it looks like a real family. Step 4. Biscuits for morale. Step 5. If all else fails, hide in the crypts. Nobody looks there. Jonah read the list twice. Her eyes burned. This child was 8 years old, and she was drafting contingency plans for her own custody battle. And step 4 was biscuits. She is drafting tactical documents, her wolf said, and its voice was not sarcastic at all. She is 8. She should be drawing pictures of horses. Instead, she is writing battle plans with a stuffed badger as her chief advisor. If anyone deserves to be protected, it is this pup. I am officially amending the mission parameters. This is no longer a contract. This is a siege, and we do not retreat from sieges. Can I keep this? Jonah asked, holding up the list. Badger says yes, but he wants credit if it works. Badger gets full credit. And biscuits. Chocolate ones, Lily specified. The plain ones are a morale failure. 3 days later, Lily executed step 5 ahead of schedule. She vanished. One moment she was supposed to be in the conservatory for a botany lesson. The next, she was gone. A frantic search of the gardens yielded nothing. Panic set in, cold and creeping. It was Jonah who found the clue. A single, muddy footprint on the path leading down to the royal crypts. No, Alex breathed, his face losing all color. She wouldn't. She's terrified of that place. She told me about the grief moss, Jonah said, her own heart hammering. Her mother told her it was real, that it glows. She looked at Alex, and for a moment, the old animosity was irrelevant. She's not running away. She's going to find her mother. She used his name without thinking. Neither of them noticed. There wasn't time. They plunged into the darkness together, Alex holding a lantern high. The air grew cold, smelling of stone and old sorrow. Their footsteps echoed off walls carved with names of long-dead moon-blessed kings and queens. They passed the bell tower foundation, and Jonah saw the great ropes that connected to the silent bell above, motionless and furred with dust. Lily, Alex called. Lily, this isn't funny. Only the echo answered. The pup's scent trail is clear, Alex's wolf said, attempting reassurance. She is not lost. She went exactly where she intended to go. This is step 5 of her operational plan. She is 8 years old, and she is executing a tactical withdrawal into ancestral territory. I would be impressed if I were not terrified. They went deeper, past alcoves holding stone sarcophagi, the lantern throwing long, dancing shadows. And then they rounded a corner into the main chamber, where the most recent tombs lay. Katrine's name was carved in fresh, sharp letters beside Theron's, and Alex broke. The lantern clattered. He caught it before it smashed, but his hands were shaking so badly the light jerked and stuttered across the stone. He leaned against a cold wall. It's my fault, he gasped, the words ragged. The day of the ambush. I was supposed to be watching the southern ridge with Theron's patrol. I was distracted. I was reading. He laughed, and the sound was broken glass. A book of poetry. The same one you found on the shelf years ago. The one we used to read together. I missed the first sign of movement on the ridge. It was only a minute, 60 seconds. By the time I raised the alarm, it was too late. Theron and Katrina were already surrounded. The confession poured out of him like something that had been damned for a year and could not be held back in this place, in the dark, with the names of his dead carved into the wall beside him. I was reading poetry while my brother and sister were dying. Theron gave me this crown. Katrina gave me her daughter, and I am failing them both, every single day. Jonah's carefully maintained distance, her professional armor, her 15 years of righteous anger, all of it was suddenly at war with the sight of this man sliding down a wall in his family's tomb, destroyed by a guilt so specific and so human it made her chest physically hurt. 60 seconds of distraction. Not a grand act of cowardice, just a man reading a poem at the wrong moment, and a world that ended because of it. And then something cracked in her, not with sympathy, but with recognition. Because she knew this, she lived in this. The belief that when the moment comes, you will not be enough. She'd felt it at every job interview, every contract signing, every time she packed a suitcase and left before someone could ask her to stay. She knelt in front of him in the cold darkness. She didn't offer platitudes. She waited. Then she reached out and took the lantern from his trembling hand, her fingers brushing his. She held it up, its light a small, steady flame in the immense dark. "You didn't fail them, Alex," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You survived, and you are here. For her. That's not failure. That's everything." "I don't have a comment," her wolf whispered. "File that under unprecedented." Jonah raised the lantern higher, and its glow pushed back the shadows in the far corner of the chamber. There, a faint, ethereal blue-green light pulsed gently. Grief moss. The phosphorescent moss Lily's mother had told her about, the one that grew in the saddest parts of the crypts and held the sorrow so you didn't have to carry it alone. It was real. Katrina had been right, and sitting in the middle of the glowing patch, her small back to them, was Lily. She wasn't crying. She was just sitting there, one hand hovering above the surface of the moss, as if afraid to touch it. Badger was propped beside her, facing the glow, his one good ear tilted as though listening to something only stuffed badgers could hear. Alex made a move toward her, but Jonah put a hand on his arm. "Wait." She approached slowly, sat down on the cold stone beside the girl. For a long time, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the glowing moss and Jonah's own heartbeat. "It's pretty, isn't it?" Jonah said. Lily nodded, her eyes fixed on the light. "Uncle Alex says we don't come down here. He says it's too sad." "Sometimes things are sad," Jonah said, "and that's okay. Trying to pretend they aren't sad is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes a lot of work, and eventually it pops up and smacks you in the face." A tiny, watery giggle. "A beach ball?" "A big one," Jonah confirmed. "Your mama told you about this moss? She said it holds the sadness for a while, so you don't have to carry it all by yourself." She reached out and laid her palm flat on the cool, damp surface of the grief moss. It pulsed brighter under her touch. "See? It doesn't hurt." Lily watched, her expression wavering between fear and desperate longing. Then she reached over and repositioned Badger so that one of his paws was touching the moss. "Badger goes first," she said. "He's braver than me." "Badger is very brave," Jonah agreed, her voice steady despite the fact that her heart was breaking. Lily watched Badger's paw on the glowing moss. Nothing terrible happened. The moss just pulsed, gentle and patient, the way her mother had described it. Then, slowly, Lily placed her own tiny hand next to Jonah's. A single tear traced down her dusty cheek and dripped onto a glowing leaf. She let out a shuddering sob, the first real deep cry Jonah had heard from her. Not a performance, not a scheme. The sound of a year's worth of grief breaking free. Jonah wrapped an arm around the girl's trembling shoulders and held her. She let her cry. Let the sobs rack her small body until they slowly subsided into ragged, hiccuping breaths. "Badger says," Lily whispered, her voice soggy and small, "that the moss works. He says he feels a little bit lighter." "Badger is very wise," Jonah whispered back. From the shadows, Alex watched, his own tears falling silently. He had tried to protect Lily from the sadness, to build a wall around her grief, believing it was his duty. He'd been wrong. He hadn't been protecting her, he'd been trapping her. Jonah wasn't shielding the child from pain, she was teaching her how to carry it. She was showing her it was okay to be sad, that it wouldn't break her. And she was doing it with patience and a stuffed badger and the simple, devastating act of sitting on a cold floor and being present. When Lily was quiet, her head resting on Jonah's shoulder, Alex walked over. He knelt on the other side of his niece, and for the first time, he put his own hand on the grief moss. He looked at the names of his brother and sister carved into the stone, and he didn't look away. The three of them stayed there for a long time. A broken king, a brave little girl, and a bitter Omega tutor with every reason to let this family collapse. Their hands together on the glowing moss. They weren't a king and his subjects. They were three people in the dark, sharing the weight of something too heavy for any one of them to carry alone. "She smells like chamomile," Alex's wolf murmured, and for the first time its voice held no reproach. "Like us." The wolf paused, confused by its own thought. "Like home." "The Omega's foot thing was one thing," Jonah's wolf muttered. "This is different. This is three people on a floor in a tomb with a glowing plant and a stuffed badger. This is not in any file. I don't have a category for this." Creating new file. Label. Things I did not expect to feel in a crypt. Subcategory. Inconvenient. Eventually, Lily fell asleep between them, her breathing finally even, one hand still on the moss and the other clutching Badger. Alex carefully gathered her into his arms. She was so small, so light. She murmured something in her sleep that might have been, "Badger says goodnight," or might have been nothing at all. They walked back up through the crypts in silence, Alex carrying Lily, Jonah carrying the lantern, and Badger. At the top of the stairs, moonlight hit them like a benediction. The crypt scene was over. But something had changed in the dark that could not be unchanged. They had shared a floor. They had shared a grief. And Jonah's wolf, despite its best efforts, had failed to file it under temporary. The custody preparations forced Alex and Jonah into proximity they'd both been avoiding. They spent evenings in the library reviewing frameworks, building a case file, documenting Lily's progress. They were professional, cordial, and the air between them was so charged that Marcus started finding excuses to leave the room. During one late session, Jonah was cross-referencing Lily's behavioral milestones when she found a slim volume of poetry tucked between legal texts. The same book of poetry she and Alex used to read together. The same edition, dog-eared at the same pages. Alex saw what she was holding and went very still. "I kept it, after you left." She stared at the book. "My mother used to say poetry was a waste of a healer's time. I told her it wasn't because Alex Moonblessed, the prince, read it, and he was the smartest person I knew." She closed the book. "She thought very highly of you, right up until the end." "Say something," his wolf commanded. "She is standing right there, with 15 years of justified fury and a book of poems you should have given back. Speak." "She was right to think highly of herself," Alex said. "Your mother was the best healer this pack ever had. What happened to her was wrong. What I did, what I didn't do, was unforgivable." "Yes," Jonah said simply. "It was." She walked out. "That was not an apology," the wolf said. "That was an admission. An apology requires action. 15 years of action you have not yet taken. I suggest you start. Perhaps with something less verbal. Your verbal skills are, and I say this with the full weight of my considerable contempt, insufficient." Later that same week, during another late library session, their feet touched under the table. Neither moved. It was a small thing, barely a thing at all, but Jonah's wolf cataloged it with clinical precision. Physical contact detected, duration, ongoing. Emotional response, complicated. Recommend immediate withdrawal. She did not withdraw. She made a note about Lily's sleep patterns and pretended her pulse wasn't doing something irregular. His wolf was no better. The Omega's foot is touching ours. This is not a strategic position. This is a vulnerability. I should object. I am not objecting. Something is malfunctioning. I am running a full diagnostic. The diagnostic has returned the result. You are in love, you absolute disaster. I am rejecting this diagnostic, running it again. Same result. I am choosing to ignore the diagnostic on the grounds that it is inconvenient. Marcus walked in, saw them, saw the tea, saw the feet, saw two people radiating enough unresolved tension to power a small village, and walked out again without a word. He was heard muttering something about the most emotionally constipated people in the kingdom as he retreated down the hallway. A week before the hearing, Callum Greyholt arrived for his court-mandated supervised visit. Jonah was required to observe and document. She was in the room when Lily's biological father walked in. Callum was not what she expected. Tall, lean, with Lily's same dark hair and a gentle, ruined face. He carried a wrapped gift in trembling hands. He looked at his daughter and his eyes filled with tears instantly. "Lilybug," he whispered. Lily stood frozen by the window, clutching Badger. She didn't run to him. She went absolutely still, the way a rabbit goes still when it sees a fox. Jonah recognized that stillness. It was the stillness of a child who had learned that the person who was supposed to protect her could disappear while standing right in front of her. Subject: biological father. Sincerity of tears? Appears genuine, Jonah's wolf assessed, forcing itself into clinical mode because the alternative was biting someone. Trembling hands? Real. Gift wrapping? Excessive, suggesting compensation behavior. Overall assessment? A man trying to win back a child like she's a performance review. Concerning, but not yet dangerous. Monitoring. The visit was painful. Callum tried. He asked about her lessons, her friends, her favorite foods. He gave her the gift, a beautifully carved wooden wolf. Lily answered in monosyllables, her eyes darting to Jonah every few seconds, as though checking that the door was still there. "Do you like the wolf?" Callum asked, his voice careful and hopeful. Lily examined it. "It's nice," she said politely. Then, with the ruthless honesty of a child, "Badger says it looks a bit scared." It did, actually. The carving had a slightly startled expression, as though the wolf had just been told some very surprising news about its tax obligations. Jonah bit the inside of her cheek to keep from laughing, and made a note. Patient demonstrates capacity for observational humor even under emotional stress. This is a good sign. At one point, Callum reached for Lily's hand. She flinched. Barely visible, but Jonah saw it and documented it. Callum saw it too, and something in his face crumpled. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "Lily, I'm so sorry I went away." Lily clutched Badger tighter. "You didn't go away," she said, her voice small and precise and devastating. "You were right there. You just stopped seeing me." The room went silent. Callum's face was ashen. Jonah's pen hovered over her notebook, and for a terrible, clarifying moment, she saw everyone in this room through the same lens. Callum, who had disappeared while being present. Alex, who had gone silent when she needed him loud. Herself, who left every job before anyone could ask her to stay. Everyone in this castle knew how to disappear while being right there. During the second visit, Lily made a strategic decision. She had clearly studied her father the way a general studies opposing terrain, and had concluded that the best defense was a good offense of aggressive normality. She sat through the entire hour being so meticulously, performatively well-behaved that it was more unsettling than open hostility. "How is school?" Callum asked. "My tutor is teaching me about the economic impact of the Jade Treaty," Lily replied in a voice that could have been generated by a very polite, very small diplomat. "I find it very educational." That's wonderful, Lily. Badger is also being educated. He is learning about fractions. He finds them challenging but rewarding. Callum looked at Jonah with the helpless expression of a man who had just realized his 8-year-old daughter was better at emotional warfare than he was. Jonah maintained a neutral expression and made a note. Patient deploys advanced social masking when threatened. Coping mechanism. Flawless politeness as armor. Also, Badger is not actually learning fractions. During the third visit, Callum brought a music box that played a lullaby Katrine used to sing. It was a miscalculation. Lily's composure cracked. "I don't want it," she said, pushing the box away.
"Your mother would want you to have this," Callum said, and there was an edge of desperation in his voice now. "She would want you to come home with me. She wouldn't want you being raised by strangers."
He looked directly at Jonah when he said strangers, and the word was loaded like a weapon. "He just called us a stranger," her wolf noted, with a calm that was more dangerous than any snarl. "We have held this child through nightmares. We have scented for her. We have read to her in voices, including an excellent dragon voice that I am personally very proud of. And he called us a stranger. File this under motivation." Lily, watching this exchange with those sharp, devastating eyes, stood up.
She walked to Jonah's side of the room, sat in the chair next to her, and said, in a voice of ringing, crystal clarity, "Jonah is not a stranger. She knows my favorite story, and she knows Badger's name. And she knows that I like the crusts cut off. You don't know any of those things, because you weren't here." Then she added, quieter, "Mama would have liked her." Callum left the visit early. His composure was gone. That evening, Callum requested a private meeting with Jonah. He found her in the library and closed the door. "Ms. Mercer," he said, and his voice had changed. The trembling sincerity was gone, replaced by something harder. "I've done my research. I know who you are. I know your mother was expelled from this castle by the Moonblessed family, Healer Mercer, stripped of her title." Jonah went cold. "I wonder," Callum continued, "how the custody court would view a professional assessment written by someone with a documented personal grievance against the Moonblessed family. Someone who might be biased toward keeping Lily away from her father simply to punish the royal household." "He is attempting to weaponize our trauma," Jonah's wolf said, and the sarcasm was gone, replaced by something ancient and very, very still. The way a wolf goes still before it attacks. "He came into our territory, into our library, and he is using our mother against us. I have revised his threat assessment from concerning but not yet dangerous to, if we were in wolf form, I would be showing every single one of my teeth right now. My assessment is based on behavioral evidence documented over weeks of direct observation," Jonah said. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. "Every finding is supported by established child development metrics. If you'd like to challenge my methodology, you're welcome to do so in open court." Callum stepped closer. "I'm her father." "Then act like it," Jonah said. "Stop trying to win her back like she's a case to be argued. She's not afraid of you because you left. She's afraid because you were there and you disappeared anyway. That's not something a music box fixes." Callum left without another word. Jonah stood in the library shaking. "That was either very brave or very stupid," her wolf said. "On reflection, it was both. Our specialty. Also, I would like it noted for the record that we did not cry, flinch, or back down, which means we are better at confrontation than the 17-year-old prince who couldn't even open his mouth at a tribunal. We have outperformed a Moonblessed. I am choosing to find this satisfying." When Alex heard about the confrontation from Marcus, he came to Jonah's suite. It was late. She was sitting at her desk, staring at the wall. "He threatened you," Alex said. His voice was quiet, but something underneath it rumbled like distant thunder. "If you are planning to freeze again," his wolf warned, "I will make every shift you attempt for the next decade feel like swallowing gravel. That woman stood in your library and defended your niece against a man who tried to use her worst memory as leverage. She did what you could not do at 17. She stood. If you cannot stand beside her now,
You do not deserve the crown or the wolf. I'm handling it, Jonah said flatly. Jonah. He sat down across from her. I know what he did, using your mother's history against you. And I know because I'm the reason that history exists. The room went very quiet. When we were younger, he said, my father told me to stay silent during the tribunal. He said the crown doesn't involve itself in guild disputes. I was 17. I was old enough to know he was wrong, old enough to defy him. And I obeyed anyway. He met her eyes. I was not a child, Jonah. That's the part I can't forgive myself for. I was old enough to stand up. I chose to sit down. And your mother lost everything. Jonah stared at him. 15 years she had carried this, and here he was, not making excuses, not hiding behind the fact that he'd been young, just saying, I failed you. I know it. I was old enough to know better. I've known it every day since. Her wolf opened its mouth to deliver a devastating one-liner. And couldn't. For the first time in 15 years, the wolf had nothing. No sarcasm, no rating, no filed report. Just a silence that felt like standing at the edge of something very high. That was not an apology, Jonah said finally. An apology is something you do, not something you say in a library at midnight. Then tell me what to do. Stand up, in the hearing, in public. Use your voice. Not for me, for Lily. Don't freeze. He nodded, and his wolf said, she is giving you a second chance. You do not deserve it. Take it anyway. And if you fail her again, I will personally ensure that your remaining years are a masterclass in regret. This is not a threat. It is a promise between a wolf and its profoundly disappointing human. We have an understanding. 3 days before the hearing, Lily presented Jonah with a new document, her most ambitious yet. Operation Hearing Survival Guide by Lily, and Badger, Chief Strategy Advisor. 4. Uncle Alex, who needs help, and Jonah, who doesn't but should read it anyway. Rule 1. No crying in front of the elders. Crying makes them think you're not stable. I read that in a book about negotiations. The book was for adults, but I read it anyway, because adults keep deciding things about my life without asking me, so I need to be prepared. Rule 2. Uncle Alex should wear the blue jacket, not the gray one. The gray one makes him look like he hasn't slept. This is accurate, but it should not be advertised. Rule 3. Yona should do the talking, because she doesn't freeze, and she knows all the big words. Rule 4. If anyone says anything mean about Yona or Uncle Alex, I will handle it. I have prepared remarks. Rule 5. Badger will be in attendance. He is my emotional support badger. If anyone objects to his presence, they can discuss it with him directly. He is very firm on this point. Attached was a second page titled Lily's Prepared Remarks in Case of Emergency, which read in increasingly wobbly handwriting, My name is Lily. This is my home. These are my people. I did not choose any of this, but I am choosing now. Please let me stay. Badger also wants to stay. Jonah showed it to Alex that evening. He read it in silence, his jaw working. Then he folded it very carefully, put it in his breast pocket, and said, in a voice that sounded like it was being held together with wire, If we lose this hearing, I will burn this castle to the ground. That is the first thing you have said in a year that I fully endorse, his wolf said. The custody hearing was held in the Great Hall. 3 pack elders and a neutral adjudicator from the Border Council. Callum sat on one side, polished and sympathetic. Alex sat on the other with Marcus, looking like a man trying very hard not to vibrate out of his skin. Lily sat in an adjacent room with a palace maid, Badger in her lap, wearing the blue dress she'd insisted on because blue is a calming color. I also read that in the negotiation book. Jonah presented her assessment. Thorough, precise, devastating. She documented the progress, the nightmares that decreased, the laughter,
the breakthrough in the crypts. She documented the supervised visits with clinical objectivity. Callum's genuine affection alongside the concerning patterns, the pressure disguised as love, the guilt deployed as a parenting tool, the micro-flinch. Callum's advocate challenged her. Ms. Mercer, isn't it true that your own family was expelled from the Moonblast territory under disputed circumstances? That your professional objectivity regarding the royal family might be compromised? There it is, Her Wolf said, and its voice was steady now, steady as iron. He played the card. Our card. The one we've been carrying since we were 12 years old. Let them see what we made of it. It is true, Jonah said evenly, that my mother was stripped of her title and our family was expelled when I was 12. It is also true that this experience gave me an intimate understanding of what it feels like to be a child whose world is dismantled by adults who prioritize institutional convenience over a child's well-being. If the court considers that a disqualification, I would respectfully argue it is the opposite. Alex stood up. Every eye turned to him. His wolf was a low, steady hum, not commanding, just present. If the court will allow me, Alex said, and his voice did not shake, I would like to address the matter of Healer Mercer directly. Marcus looked alarmed. This was not in the plan. 15 years ago, Jonah Mercer's mother was accused of negligence and expelled from this territory. I was 17 years old. I was present during the incident and possessed information that could have cleared her name. I was instructed by my father to remain silent. I obeyed. I was not a child. I was nearly a man. And I chose cowardice. The room was absolutely still. I was wrong, Alex said. And this family's failure to protect one of its most dedicated servants is a stain that no passage of time erases. Ms. Mercer's willingness to serve a family that wronged her is not evidence of compromised objectivity. It is evidence of a character so extraordinary that I can barely comprehend it, let alone match it. I have waited 15 years for you to use your voice, his wolf said, and the words vibrated with something that had no name. Do not stop now. This court should weigh her assessment on its merits, Alex said. Because I have watched this woman walk into the home that hurt her and choose every single day to put a child's well-being above her own pain. She has more integrity than anyone in this room, including me. He sat down. Jonah stared at her notes, jaw tight, eyes bright. Her wolf was supposed to say something cutting. Instead, it said, "Oh." Just "oh." One syllable. The sound of a glacier beginning to move after a very long winter. The elders deliberated for 2 hours. They ruled that Callum had made genuine progress, but that Lily's expressed wishes, her documented well-being, and the concerning behavioral patterns did not support immediate transfer. Lily would stay. Callum was granted continued supervised visitation with a review in 6 months. When the ruling was read, Lily burst through the doors and threw herself at Alex, nearly knocking him off his chair. Then she turned and threw herself at Jonah. Then, because she was Lily, she held Badger up to the nearest elder and said, very solemnly, Badger thanks the court for its service and would like it noted that his prepared remarks were excellent, and he is disappointed he did not get to deliver them. The elder, a woman of approximately 900 years, looked at Badger, looked at Lily, and said, The court acknowledges Badger's contribution and enters it into the record. Lily beamed. It was the biggest smile any of them had seen from her in over a year. For the record, her wolf noted, its voice thick with something it refused to name. We are not crying. This is an allergic reaction to judicial proceedings. File it accordingly. That evening, the castle exhaled. Marcus organized an informal dinner, just the 4 of them. Lily chattered non-stop, telling Jonah about the Badger book she wanted to write, and asking Alex if she could take astronomy lessons because she wanted to name a star after her mother. You can't actually name a star, Alex said gently. Badger says you can if you're a princess, Lily countered. And also Badger says you should tell Jonah she looked nice at the hearing, because you were staring and it's rude to stare without issuing a compliment. Badger read that in the etiquette section.
Alex turned the color of a tomato. Marcus suddenly found his chicken extremely interesting. Jonah developed an urgent need to study the ceiling. The pup just deployed Badger as a romantic accelerant, her wolf observed. She's using a stuffed animal to do the emotional labor that two adult wolves cannot manage. I am humiliated and also deeply impressed. After Lily was in bed, Jonah found herself on the balcony. The bell tower loomed above, its great bell still and silent. Alex joined her, standing close but not touching. "You were extraordinary today," he said. "I was doing my job." Then, quieter. "And you were extraordinary too. What you said about my mother? I should have said it 15 years ago." "Yes, you should have." Silence. Then Jonah said, "I hated you for a very long time, so thoroughly it became a hobby. My wolf kept a running tally. 14,612 individual grievances, her wolf supplied. But who's counting? We also kept subcategories. There was a particularly robust section dedicated to things he said that were charming and therefore additionally infuriating. It has 347 entries. I am not proud of this. I am slightly proud of this." "And now?" Alex asked. "Now I'm too tired to hate you. And you make good tea. And your niece loves you in a way that's impossible to fake. Which means you must be doing something right even when you think you're not." She paused. "My wolf wants me to tell you that she is not forgiving you. She is reclassifying the grudge from active to archived. There's a difference." He laughed, and it was the first real, warm, unguarded laugh she'd heard from him. It changed his entire face. She hated how much she liked it. The Omega's laugh response is positive, his wolf noted, heart rate elevated. This is not a professional observation. I am choosing not to file it because filing it would require admitting what it means. I am not ready to admit what it means. I have spent 15 years being disappointed in you, and I am not prepared to stop on the basis of one good speech and a nice laugh. That said, the speech was very good. I am conditionally reducing my disappointment from comprehensive to significant. Do not let this go to your head. Jonah, he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like it had been waiting there for years. Your contract expires in 10 days. The warmth cooled. I know. I don't want you to leave. She turned, and the expression on his face was not the mask of a king or the awkwardness of an employer. It was the face of the 17-year-old boy who used to save the best hiding spots for her, who wrote her secret codes in margins of poetry books, who had lost her because he wasn't brave enough to speak. He's doing the face, her wolf warned. The one from when we were young, the one where he looks like a sad dog that has knocked over a vase and knows it. Do not fall for it. We have a policy, his wolf took a breath. Tell her she is not a contract. Tell her she is not temporary. Tell her that every poem you have read since you were 17 has been about her, and you did not realize it until she walked back into your life and every verse finally made sense. Tell her, or I swear on every moon that has ever risen over this wretched castle, I will make your remaining years a monument to regret. I'm in love with you, he said. Simple and true and terrifying. I think I have been since I was 17. I think my wolf has been composing extremely judgmental poetry about it the entire time. Accurate, his wolf confirmed. The poetry is excellent. You do not deserve it. He reached into his jacket with trembling hands and pulled out a heavy velvet bag, emptying it onto the balcony railing. An entire set of matched, carved obsidian chess pieces cascaded onto the stone, gleaming in the moonlight. All except one. Lily found the missing queen, he said. She gave it to you at the dinner, the black stone. Jonah's hand went to her pocket. This set has been in my family for 200 years. My grandfather said the kingdom couldn't be truly whole until the queen was found. He took the piece from her hand and placed it with the others. The set was complete. The contract is over, Jonah. I'm not asking you to stay as a tutor, and I'm not asking you to stay for Lily. He took her hands. Stay for me. Stay and be my queen. Her wolf opened its mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the record, it began, and its voice was shaking. I am not forgiving him. I am simply... She stopped. He smells like cedar and old books, and something I have been trying to forget for 15 years, and I am so tired of pretending I don't remember what it felt like to be 12 and believe someone would always be there. She paused. Revised classification. Home. File it. Don't you dare file it under temporary. You are the most infuriating man I have ever met, Jonah said, tears falling. You were infuriating at 17, and you are infuriating now, and your wolf has terrible literary taste, and I am going to spend the rest of my life telling you so. Is that a yes? It's a yes. And also, you owe me 15 years of explanations, a formal apology to my mother's memory, and you are never, ever allowed to freeze on me again. Agreed. All of it. Every condition. He pulled her into his arms, and his wolf, that proud, anguished creature that had punished its human for 15 years, went silent. Not disappointment, not judgment. The silence of a long journey finally ending. Well done, boy, the wolf said softly. Well done. The wedding was, by royal standards, a chaotic and deeply improper affair. They were married in the castle's central garden, the Pack Unity Festival in full swing beyond the walls. Callum had sent a letter to Lily, short and honest, saying he was proud of her and would keep trying. Lily had read it twice, folded it into Badger's pocket, and said, Badger says thank you. Badger is cautiously optimistic. It was, Jonah thought, the most hopeful thing she'd seen all month. The officiant was Lily. She stood on a wooden stool in a miniature officiant's robe over sky-blue silk, holding her parchment with immense seriousness. We are here today, she began, to get my uncle and Jonah married. Because they are in love, and because I said so. Also because Badger has been project managing this since week 1, and he deserves to see results. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Marcus wiped his eye. Allergies. Jonah, do you promise to always live here and never pack your suitcase again, even if Uncle Alex is being a grumpy face? I promise. And do you promise to always know the answers to my math homework and to make the good chocolate chip cookies, not the dry ones? The good ones, I promise. And do you promise to do all the voices when you read, even the embarrassing ones, especially the embarrassing ones, because the dragon voice is my favorite and Badger's favorite, and honestly, it's the main reason I let you stay? Jonah laughed through her tears. Every voice, every dragon, I promise. Lily turned to Alex. Uncle Alex, do you promise to love Jonah forever and ever, and to let her help you with the kingdom stuff because she's smarter than you? She is, and I promise. And do you promise to keep the jam off your shirts because Badger says it's embarrassing, and also it ruins the formal portraits? I will try my best. Badger says trying is acceptable. Lily paused. She looked down at her parchment, and when she looked up again, her eyes were serious in a way that made her look much older than 8. And do you promise, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried across the entire garden, to never, ever go quiet when someone you love needs you to be loud? The garden went still. The question was not in any wedding script. It was a child's demand, born from a year of watching adults fail and recover, and fail and try again. Alex looked at his niece, this fierce, brilliant girl who had orchestrated their entire lives with a stuffed badger and a series of increasingly sophisticated battle plans. He looked at Jonah, the woman who had walked back into the house that hurt her and chosen to stay. He thought of his brother, his sister, his wolf, the poetry book, the 60 seconds, the tribunal, the 17-year-old boy who went silent when it mattered. Never again, his wolf said. And it was a vow. I promise, Alex said, his voice ringing. I will never be quiet again. Good, Lily declared, slamming her hand down. Then you are married. You may kiss her. And then we can have cake. She looked at the assembled crowd. Badger will be cutting the cake. He has been practicing. Please do not judge his technique. He only has one ear, and it affects his balance. As Alex kissed his wife, the silent bell began to toll from the high tower, ringing out over the kingdom for the first time in over a year. Marcus had arranged it in secret. It wasn't mourning anymore. It was joy, new beginnings, a family made whole. Not a perfect family, not an unbroken one, but a real one, forged in the dark, held together by a grieving king who learned to speak, a bitter Omega who learned to stay, and an 8-year-old girl with a one-eared badger and a 5-step plan. Jonah kissed him back, and her wolf, that bitter, sarcastic, loyal guardian who had kept watch for 15 years, finally let go. Not of the memory, never of the memory, but of the weight. This chaotic, beautiful, unexpected life was hers. She was home. She had always been enough. She just needed a family brave enough to say it out loud.